Well, they told stories about their labor, and they told stories about the ways they were hired, about the kinds of treatment that they got from their employers. And they told stories about history. One woman who I write about is named Geraldine Miller, who lived in the Bronx. She was an organizer and a domestic worker here in New York City. She lived in the Bronx, and she told stories about something called the Bronx slave market. And these were street corners during the Great Depression where African American women stood while they were waiting to be hired as day workers. And Miller told a story about women who were waiting on the street corners, and employers would come up and look for the women with the most scarred knees. And she told a story because women would look for the most scarred knees because those were the women who scrubbed floors down on their hands and knees. And Miller told a story as a way to, I think, highlight the exploitation in the occupation, but it also became a platform for reform. So as she told this story, she told the women, we are never, ever again going to scrub floors down on all fours.
It's a fascinating story because, of course, we associate what sounds like a shape-up. You know, we call it a slave market when it has to do with women. But the shape-up was a common way of hiring unskilled men to do manual labor. And now you've uncovered a moment where women go through exactly the same ordeal. So what looked like a gender difference for a lot of years turns out not to be one.
Absolutely. And the term slave market was actually given to those street corners by Ella Baker and Marvel Cook, who were two African-American women organizers here in New York City in the 1930s, who wrote an expose about the treatment of domestic workers during the Depression. And it's interesting because that name stuck, and it stuck for women organizers in the 1960s who probably had never read anything about the slave markets of the 30s, but had certainly heard those stories, and those stories became part of their organizing toolbox.